You don't belong in this suite." The words landed across the marble lobby like a glass shattering at midnight, sharp enough to stop conversations, quiet enough to make people pretend they hadn't heard them. Naomi Whitaker stood motionless beneath the chandelier of the Meridian Crown Hotel in downtown Chicago, one hand wrapped around the handle of a black carry-on suitcase, the other holding a keycard that had just blinked red 3 times upstairs outside Penthouse Suite 4701. Around her, the hotel glowed with the polished warmth of money. Gold trim reflected against polished stone floors. A jazz piano drifted softly from the cocktail lounge near the elevators. Men in tailored suits carried bourbon glasses. Women in evening gowns crossed the lobby in heels that clicked like tiny metronomes against the marble. And right in the center of all that luxury stood a black woman in a charcoal wool coat, dark jeans, and white sneakers while the night manager looked at her like she had wandered in from the wrong side of the city. Evelyn Hart folded her arms behind the front desk with the confidence of someone who had mistaken authority for intelligence years ago. "Ma'am," she repeated louder this time, making sure nearby guests could hear. "The penthouse level is restricted to verified guests only." Naomi slowly placed the dead keycard on the counter. Her face didn't tighten. Her voice didn't rise. "Run the name again," she said calmly. Evelyn barely glanced at the screen. "I already did." Claire Monroe, the front desk supervisor standing beside her, leaned closer and whispered something that made both women smirk. Naomi noticed it immediately. She had seen that look before. 23 years old in Atlanta when a leasing office employee asked if she was lost while touring luxury condos. 31 in Los Angeles when a valet refused to believe the Bentley belonged to her. 42 years old now, standing inside a hotel her company had owned for 93 days, and somehow the look never changed. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi Whitaker. A cold draft swept through the revolving front doors as 2 businessmen entered from Michigan Avenue laughing about a Cubs game. One of them slowed when he noticed the tension at the desk. The lobby no longer felt warm. It felt charged, like everyone sensed something ugly unfolding in real time, but nobody wanted to say it first. Naomi reached into her coat pocket and slid a matte black card across the marble counter. "Use this account," she said. Claire picked it up with 2 fingers, studying it like evidence. "This doesn't prove anything," she muttered. Evelyn's lips curled slightly. "Honestly, people try this all the time. Fake executive cards. Stolen reservations." Naomi stared at her for a long second. "You think I stole access to my own suite?" The question hung there heavier than anyone expected. A young concierge named Maya Brooks looked up sharply from the far side of the lobby. Her eyes moved from Naomi to the black card to the reservation screen beside Evelyn. Recognition flashed across her face for half a second before she quickly looked back down. But Naomi saw it. And so did Evelyn. The night manager straightened immediately. "Security may need to escort you out if this continues," she said flatly. Somewhere behind Naomi, a champagne glass clinked against another. The piano music kept playing. But the atmosphere had already changed. Because the problem was never the keycard. The problem was that Evelyn Hart had already decided what power was supposed to look like. And Naomi Whitaker didn't fit the picture. Naomi Whitaker did not look away from Evelyn Hart. She stood at the center of the lobby with the same stillness that once carried her through boardroom negotiations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The same calm that had unsettled investors who mistook quiet for weakness. Around her, the Meridian Crown Hotel continued pretending to function normally. Bellhops rolled polished luggage carts across the marble floor. The bartender in the lounge wiped down crystal glasses beneath warm amber lights. A couple near the elevators whispered to each other while pretending not to stare. But the air no longer moved naturally. Tension sat over the room like humidity before a thunderstorm. Evelyn tapped her manicured nails against the desk. "If you cannot verify the reservation, I need you to leave the property voluntarily." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Voluntarily?" Claire folded her arms with growing confidence. "Look, we are trying to help you avoid embarrassment." Naomi almost smiled at that. Almost. She had heard the word embarrassment weaponized against black success her entire life. People used it whenever they wanted someone to disappear quietly before truth became inconvenient. Naomi slowly removed her gloves and placed them beside the dead keycard. You still have not checked the executive registry. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I checked enough. Maya Brooks glanced up again from the concierge station across the lobby. Naomi noticed the hesitation in her eyes now. Fear, recognition, conflict. The young concierge knew something was wrong. But inside luxury spaces, people learned quickly that speaking up often cost more than staying silent. Naomi understood that better than anyone. 12 years earlier, before Whitaker Meridian became one of the largest Black-owned hospitality groups in America, Naomi had walked into a development meeting in Dallas wearing a navy sweater and carrying blueprints under her arm. A man twice her age handed her an empty coffee cup and asked for cream and sugar. When she explained she owned the project, the room went silent for nearly 10 seconds. Not shocked because she was qualified. Shocked because she was Black. Shocked because power had entered the room wearing the wrong skin. And now here it was again. Same silence. Different carpet. Brandon Cole emerged from a hallway near the elevators, broad shoulders filling out a gray security jacket with Meridian embossed above the chest pocket. He approached slowly, scanning Naomi up and down before stopping beside Evelyn. What seems to be the issue, he asked. Evelyn answered immediately. Unverified guest refusing to leave restricted property. Naomi looked directly at Brandon. Interesting description. Brandon kept his tone neutral but distant. Ma'am, if there is confusion with your reservation, we can assist you somewhere else tonight. Somewhere else. Naomi repeated the phrase silently in her head. Not another suite. Not another floor. Somewhere else entirely. As if the building itself needed protection from her presence. Claire slid the black executive card back across the counter with one finger. These are not difficult to fake anymore. Naomi picked it up carefully. Neither is professionalism, apparently. A businessman near the lounge coughed into his drink, trying to hide a laugh. Evelyn shot him a glare before turning back to Naomi. Last warning. Naomi looked past Evelyn toward the towering glass windows facing Michigan Avenue. Outside, Chicago shimmered in cold silver reflections beneath streetlights and passing headlights. Somewhere beyond that skyline sat the corporate headquarters of Whitaker Meridian Hotels. 43 floors. 300 employees. A company Naomi built after years of hearing doors lock before she even touched the handle. She slowly reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Calmly. Like someone checking the time. Evelyn scoffed under her breath. Calling someone is not going to change policy. Naomi unlocked the screen and looked up. No, she said quietly. But it may expose who has been hiding behind it. Across the lobby, Maya Brooks stopped typing entirely. Because for the first time that night, she recognized the voice. Not from the lobby. Not from the reservation system. From quarterly leadership broadcasts played company-wide every Monday morning. And suddenly the color drained from her face. Maya Brooks could feel her heartbeat in her throat. Across the lobby, Naomi Whitaker stood perfectly still with her phone resting lightly in one hand, while Evelyn Hart continued speaking with the confidence of someone who had never once imagined consequences applying to her. But Maya knew that voice. Every employee inside Whitaker Meridian Hotels knew that voice. Calm, precise, controlled. Naomi's leadership messages played monthly across every property in the company. Maya had listened to them while folding brochures at the concierge desk during overnight shifts. She remembered one sentence, almost word for word. Luxury means nothing if dignity is missing from the room. At the time, Maya thought it sounded inspiring. Tonight it sounded terrifying. Brandon Cole crossed his arms beside the front desk, trying to establish authority over a situation he clearly did not understand. Ma'am, he said carefully, I need to ask you one last time to step away from the restricted area. Naomi looked at him without blinking. Restricted from whom? Brandon hesitated for half a second. That tiny pause said more than his answer ever could. Claire Monroe jumped in quickly. From guests who actually belong here. The words slipped out too fast, too sharp, too honest. A hush moved through the lobby immediately afterward. Even the businessman near the cocktail lounge lowered his glass slowly. Claire realized too late that she had crossed from implication into exposure. Evelyn straightened her blazer and attempted to recover control. What my colleague means is verified guests. Naomi nodded once. Of course. But her eyes never left Claire. Maya looked down at the computer screen beside her. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard while fear crawled up her spine. The executive reservation was still there. Penthouse, Suite 4701. Naomi Whitaker. Owner-level clearance. Internal override active. Maya swallowed hard. Every instinct told her to stay quiet. Night managers controlled schedules. Promotions. Recommendations. One complaint from Evelyn Hart could bury a junior employee's career before sunrise. But another feeling pushed harder against her chest now. Shame. Because standing silent suddenly felt too much like participation. Naomi placed her carry-on suitcase beside the desk. "You disabled my keycard before verifying the reservation," she said calmly. "Interesting process." Evelyn forced a smile that looked brittle around the edges. "We acted based on concern for guest security." Naomi tilted her head slightly. Security for whom? Nobody answered. A group of late-night conference guests entered through the revolving doors carrying branded tote bags from a healthcare convention. The moment they sensed tension, conversation slowed. People always noticed when humiliation entered a room, especially expensive rooms pretending to be elegant. Daniel Price, a real estate attorney from Philadelphia staying on the 32nd floor, stepped away from the elevators and quietly pulled out his phone. Not openly filming yet, just holding it low at his side while watching everything unfold. Naomi noticed him immediately. "Please do not record this yet," she said softly. Daniel looked surprised. "Ma'am, they are clearly targeting you." Naomi gave a faint nod. "I know, but truth sounds stronger when people say it out loud first." The sentence landed across the lobby heavier than shouting would have. Maya's stomach tightened, because suddenly everybody understood exactly what this moment was becoming. Not confusion, not policy. Exposure. Evelyn's voice hardened. "Brandon, escort her out." Brandon stepped forward carefully. "Ma'am, I do not want this escalating." Naomi finally looked directly at him. "Then stop escalating it." Silence. Thick and immediate. Somewhere near the bar, ice dropped into a whiskey glass with a sharp crack that sounded louder than it should have. Claire grabbed the dead key card from the counter and held it between two fingers. "This card no longer works anyway." Naomi's expression never changed. "Neither will your access badge by morning." Claire laughed nervously. Evelyn did not. Because for the first time that night, doubt moved visibly across her face. Tiny, fast, but real. And Maya Brooks saw it happen. Maya Brooks stared at the reservation screen as if it had suddenly become radioactive. The glowing letters remained unchanged no matter how many times she refreshed the system. Naomi Whitaker. Penthouse, Suite 4701. Owner clearance active. Every protocol in the building recognized the reservation except the people standing behind the front desk. Evelyn Hart noticed Maya freezing at the terminal and immediately narrowed her eyes. "Maya," she snapped sharply, "stop hovering over the system and focus on your desk." Maya swallowed hard but did not move. Her pulse hammered so loudly she could barely hear the piano music drifting through the lobby anymore. Naomi Whitaker stood only 20 feet away, calm as still water, while three employees slowly buried themselves in assumptions they could no longer control. Brandon shifted uncomfortably beside Evelyn. Even he could feel the atmosphere changing now. The guests were no longer quietly observing. They were listening, judging. A woman near the elevators folded her arms and whispered to her husband, "Something about this feels wrong." Daniel Price slipped his phone into his jacket pocket but stepped closer instead. "Maybe someone should just verify the reservation properly," he said carefully. Evelyn gave him a tight smile that barely concealed irritation. "Sir, this is an internal matter." Daniel nodded once. "It became public the second you accused her of trespassing." The words landed hard. Claire Monroe scoffed loudly. "People always want to turn everything into discrimination." Naomi finally looked directly at Claire. "No," she said quietly. "People just recognize it faster now." Silence spread across the marble lobby again. Not empty silence. Heavy silence. The kind that makes every movement feel louder than normal. Maya looked down at the keyboard in front of her and realized she had reached the moment people always talk about later in life. The moment where staying quiet follows you forever. She remembered her mother working housekeeping shifts at a roadside motel outside Cleveland when Maya was 12 years old. One manager used to follow black guests through the breakfast area pretending to refill coffee while checking if they stole anything. Maya's mother would come home exhausted and angry, but always say the same thing. The worst part is not the people who do it. The worst part is everybody who watches. Maya slowly stood from behind the concierge desk. Evelyn turned immediately. Sit back down. Maya's voice trembled at first. Her reservation is real. Every conversation in the lobby stopped. Claire blinked. Brandon looked toward Evelyn instinctively. Daniel took another step closer. Maya continued before fear could shut her down. I saw the owner clearance attached to her suite when the overnight system refreshed. Evelyn's expression hardened instantly. You are confused. Maya shook her head. No, ma'am. I am not. Claire laughed nervously. Maya, you are a junior concierge. You do not understand executive coding. But Maya did not back away now. I understand enough to know nobody checked the registry before disabling her access. Naomi said nothing. She simply watched Maya carefully, almost like she understood exactly how difficult this moment was costing her. Evelyn stepped around the front desk slowly, lowering her voice into something colder. One more word, and you can clean out your locker before sunrise. Brandon glanced sideways at Evelyn. Even he seemed uncomfortable hearing it spoken out loud. Maya looked down briefly. Fear flickered across her face. Then she lifted her chin again. If telling the truth costs me this job, she said softly, then maybe this is not the kind of place I thought it was. A murmur rolled through the lobby. Daniel looked directly at Evelyn now. That sounded a lot less like policy and a lot more like intimidation. Evelyn ignored him completely. Brandon, she ordered sharply, escort both of them out. But Brandon did not move immediately this time. Because somewhere underneath the security jacket and professional posture, doubt had finally arrived. Naomi Whitaker noticed it the second it entered his eyes. And when she spoke again, her voice cut through the room like a blade wrapped in velvet. Careful, she said calmly. Every decision you make from this point forward will follow you after tonight ends. Brandon Cole finally stepped forward, but the confidence he wore earlier had started cracking around the edges. The security badge clipped to his jacket suddenly looked heavier against his chest. Ma'am, he said carefully, please gather your belongings. Naomi Whitaker looked at him for a long moment before answering. You still think this is about belongings? Brandon did not respond. Because somewhere deep down, he already knew the situation had moved far beyond a hotel room. Evelyn Hart folded her arms tighter beside the front desk, trying to hold the lobby together through sheer force of attitude. This conversation is over, she announced loudly. Enough for everyone nearby to hear. She is not staying here tonight. Naomi slowly picked up the handle of her carry-on suitcase. The wheels clicked softly across the marble as she moved it closer beside her. Every eye in the lobby followed the sound. Daniel Price remained near the elevators now, no longer pretending to mind his business. Two women seated near the cocktail lounge had completely stopped their conversation. Even the bartender leaned subtly forward while polishing a glass that no longer needed polishing. The room had become a courtroom without anyone officially admitting it. Claire Monroe reached behind the counter and pulled Naomi's leather overnight bag from the luggage hold area. You can pick this up outside, she said coldly. Then she placed it on the floor several feet away from the desk, like she was distancing herself from contamination. The gesture was small, but humiliation rarely arrives loudly. Usually it arrives through tiny movements people think nobody notices. Naomi noticed all of them. For a brief second, her eyes drifted toward the towering windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. The reflection staring back at her looked calm, controlled, untouchable. But memory moved underneath that calm like a current beneath ice. She was 19 again, standing beside her mother outside a roadside hotel in Macon, Georgia, during a thunderstorm after their reservation had suddenly disappeared. Naomi remembered her mother holding two garment bags and pretending not to cry while the desk clerk avoided eye contact. She remembered sitting inside an old Buick sedan at 2:30 in the morning listening to rain hammer against the windshield while her mother whispered something Naomi never forgot. Some people would rather lose business than admit we belong. That sentence stayed with Naomi through every boardroom, every acquisition, every hotel ribbon-cutting ceremony afterward. It became fuel, not rage. Precision. She built Whitaker Meridian one property at a time because she wanted spaces where dignity did not depend on appearance. And now, inside one of her own hotels, the exact poison she spent decades fighting stood smiling behind the front desk wearing a management badge. Claire slid Naomi's overnight bag farther across the marble floor using her foot. Exit is that way. Maya Brooks looked horrified. But Claire ignored her. Evelyn pointed toward the revolving doors. Brandon, remove her access from the system completely. Brandon hesitated. Evelyn, do it. The command cracked through the lobby instantly. Brandon slowly reached for the tablet clipped to his belt and disabled the suite access entirely. A soft confirmation tone echoed from the device. Penthouse access revoked. Naomi heard it clearly. So did everyone else. The sound hung in the air like a final insult. Daniel stepped forward immediately. You just locked her out before proving anything. Evelyn snapped back. Sir, stay out of this. But Daniel did not move. No, he said quietly. I think everybody stayed out of it too long already. Silence swallowed the room again. Heavy, suffocating. Naomi bent down slowly and lifted her overnight bag from the floor herself. No anger. No scene. Somehow that made it worse. Because dignity standing beside disrespect always exposes the ugliness faster. Naomi straightened, looked directly at Evelyn Hart, and spoke with terrifying calm. You should have checked the name before you touched the door. Evelyn forced a laugh that sounded thinner than before. And you should have booked somewhere you could afford. That was the moment the entire lobby changed. Because even Brandon lowered his eyes after hearing it. And Naomi Whitaker finally stopped looking patient. The silence after Evelyn Hart's last sentence felt almost physical. Even the jazz piano near the cocktail lounge seemed distant now, buried beneath the weight pressing down across the lobby. Naomi Whitaker stood completely still with one hand resting on the handle of her overnight bag, while dozens of eyes waited to see what she would do next. Most people expected anger. Maybe shouting. Maybe humiliation finally breaking through composure. Instead, Naomi calmly unlocked her phone screen. That frightened Evelyn more than yelling ever could have. Who are you calling now? Claire Monroe asked with forced sarcasm. Naomi did not look up. Someone who understands consequences. She pressed a contact near the top of her screen and lifted the phone to her ear. The line connected almost instantly. Tessa, Naomi said quietly. Across the lobby, Maya Brooks felt chills run down her arms. She knew that name too. Tessa Grant was not some assistant at a local office. She was Executive Operations Director for Whitaker Meridian Hotels, one of the most powerful people in the entire company. Naomi's voice remained calm. Initiate sunrise protocol. Everything near the front desk suddenly stopped moving. Brandon looked confused. Claire frowned slightly. But Maya's face drained of color immediately because she had heard whispers about sunrise protocol during regional training seminars. Emergency executive audit. Full operational review. Access freeze authority. Evelyn laughed nervously. What is that supposed to mean? Naomi ignored her and continued speaking into the phone. I want lobby camera archives pulled from 11:15 tonight forward. Full reservation logs. Badge activity. Guest complaint records tied to management review. Tessa's voice came clearly through the speaker loud enough for nearby guests to hear pieces of it. Already underway. Do you want internal ethics copied? Naomi's eyes never left Evelyn Hart. Yes. And legal. Brandon slowly shifted his weight backward. Claire folded her arms tighter. Evelyn forced another smile, but this one cracked visibly around the edges. You think fake corporate calls scare me? Naomi lowered the phone slowly. No, she said. I think evidence should. Daniel Price stepped closer again, now openly listening without pretending otherwise. Several guests near the elevators exchanged uneasy looks. Because suddenly this no longer sounded like a customer making threats. It sounded procedural, real, controlled, dangerous. Maya stared at the front desk terminal again while her hands trembled beside the keyboard. Then she noticed something appear on the management dashboard. A red banner stretching across the top of the screen. Executive audit active. Property under review. Her breath caught immediately. Oh my God, she whispered under her breath. Evelyn noticed. Maya staring at the screen and snapped instantly. What now? Maya looked up slowly. The system just entered executive review mode. Claire scoffed. That can be faked. But Maya shook her head. No, it cannot. Naomi placed her phone gently on the marble counter. You disabled my suite access, she said softly. Now let us see who still has access when this finishes. The lobby had completely transformed now. Guests no longer looked entertained. They looked unsettled. Because people recognized power long before they understood it fully. and Power had quietly entered the room, wearing dark jeans and white sneakers. Brandon cleared his throat carefully. Evelyn, maybe we should verify with corporate before pushing further. Evelyn turned sharply toward him. Do not start doubting me now. But Brandon's expression had already changed. He was replaying every moment in his head. The dead keycard, the owner clearance, the calm voice, the protocol activation. Most of all, he was replaying Naomi's lack of fear. Innocent people usually panic when authority corners them. Naomi Whittaker had done the opposite. She had become calmer the deeper the situation escalated. That realization finally reached him. Claire tried one more laugh, but it sounded weak now. You are seriously pretending to run this company? Naomi looked directly at her. No, she said quietly. I am deciding who still works for it by sunrise. And for the first time that night, nobody laughed. The red executive audit banner continued glowing across every terminal behind the front desk, like a silent alarm nobody could shut off. Evelyn Hart stared at the screen, then back at Naomi Whittaker, trying desperately to force reality into a shape that still protected her authority. But reality had already moved past her. Guests near the cocktail lounge were openly whispering now. Phones appeared discreetly in hands. Not filming aggressively. Just ready. Waiting. Because everyone sensed the same thing. Something enormous was about to break open in the middle of the Meridian Crown lobby. Claire Monroe stepped backward from the counter first. Tiny movement. Barely noticeable. But fear always shows itself in inches. Before words. This is ridiculous, she muttered. Nobody activates executive review at 2 in the morning. Maya Brooks looked directly at her. Owners do. The sentence landed like a dropped glass. Sharp. Final. Brandon Cole's eyes snapped toward Naomi instantly. Evelyn laughed too quickly. Too loudly. Owner, she scoffed. You seriously expect us to believe that? Naomi calmly reached into her coat pocket again and removed a slim black leather card holder. She opened it slowly and placed a silver executive credential onto the marble counter beneath the chandelier lights. Whittaker Meridian Hotels. Naomi Whittaker, Chief Executive Officer. The room went completely still. Not quiet. Still. Like the entire lobby forgot how to breathe for one suspended moment. Daniel Price stared openly now. One of the women near the elevators whispered, "Oh my God." Brandon looked down at the credential, then immediately stepped away from Naomi as though distance itself suddenly mattered. Claire's face drained pale beneath the warm lobby lighting. Evelyn did not touch the credential. She only stared at it with the expression of someone watching control leave her body in real time. Naomi folded her gloves carefully beside the card holder. Even now her movements remained measured, elegant, controlled. That somehow made the humiliation around the front desk feel even heavier. You locked me out of my own suite, Naomi said softly. Her voice did not rise, but every word carried clean through the marble lobby. Inside a hotel my company purchased 93 days ago. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Naomi's eyes shifted toward Claire first. You implied I stole access because I did not match your image of wealth. Then toward Brandon. You revoked my suite access before verifying a single executive protocol. Finally, she looked directly at Evelyn Hart. And you decided I did not belong here before you even checked my name. Evelyn opened her mouth, but no words came out immediately. For the first time that night, confidence abandoned her completely. Naomi continued calmly. The problem was never the reservation. Her gaze swept slowly across the lobby filled with watching guests. Frozen employees and polished luxury now stripped of its illusion. The problem was what all of you assumed a black woman in a wool coat could not possibly own. The silence afterward felt enormous. Maya lowered her eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the truth sitting exposed in front of everyone now. Daniel finally spoke first. You tried to remove the owner from her own property. Claire whispered under her breath. We did not know. Naomi looked directly at her. Exactly. That single word hit harder than shouting ever could have. Because suddenly the entire lobby understood what she meant. If this was how they treated the owner while believing she was just another black guest, then how many others had they humiliated without consequences? Evelyn finally forced herself to speak. Ms. Whittaker, this has been a misunderstanding. Naomi's expression hardened slightly for the first time all night. No, she said quietly. A misunderstanding happens after questions. She glanced toward the dead suite keycard still lying on the marble counter between them. This happened after assumptions. Somewhere behind the front desk, another terminal chimed sharply. Then another. Brandon looked toward the screens and swallowed hard. Multiple management access reviews now flashing red across the property system. Naomi Whitaker picked up her executive credential slowly and slid it back into the leather holder. "Sunrise is coming," she said calmly. "And by then this hotel will not belong to the same leadership anymore." The lobby no longer belonged to Evelyn Hart. That truth settled into the marble floors before anyone said another word. The executive audit alerts continued flashing red across every terminal behind the front desk, while hotel guests stood frozen between fascination and disbelief. Naomi Whitaker remained calm in the center of it all, one hand resting lightly on the handle of her overnight bag, as if she were simply waiting for a delayed elevator instead of dismantling an entire leadership team in real time. Then the first access badge failed. Claire Monroe's terminal suddenly locked with a sharp electronic tone. "Access suspended" appeared across the screen in bold red letters. Claire jerked backward immediately. "What is happening?" she whispered. Brandon looked toward the monitor beside security operations. His own credentials had entered restricted review status. The color drained from his face. Evelyn grabbed the edge of the front desk hard enough for her knuckles to pale beneath the lobby lights. "This is insane," she snapped. "You cannot terminate staff overnight." Naomi looked directly at her. "You terminated dignity overnight." Silence swallowed the room again. Guests who had been quietly watching now stood openly near the lobby seating area. Daniel Price folded his arms while staring at the front desk with visible disgust. One older woman near the elevator slowly shook her head and muttered, "All this because she was black and dressed casually." Nobody argued with her, because everybody knew she was right now. Naomi's phone vibrated softly against the marble counter. She answered without looking away from Evelyn. "Yes, Tessa." The executive director's voice carried clearly enough for nearby guests to hear pieces of the conversation. Audit findings confirmed. Multiple prior complaints tied to discriminatory guest treatment were buried at property level. "We have at least 7 incidents involving profiling concerns over the last 14 months. Maya Brooks lowered her eyes immediately after hearing that. 7 incidents. 7 times silence one before tonight. Naomi's expression hardened slightly. "Proceed with leadership restructuring." Evelyn stepped forward instantly. "Ms. Whitaker, please. We can discuss this privately." Naomi finally turned fully toward her. "You humiliated me publicly." Her voice remained calm, but every word carried weight now. "We will correct it publicly too." Brandon removed his security earpiece slowly, like he already understood the night was over for him. Claire looked close to panic. "I was following instructions," she blurted out. Naomi answered immediately. "That sentence has protected bad behavior for generations." The words hit the lobby harder than shouting could have, because nobody there could deny the truth inside them. Another terminal chimed sharply. Then another. Maya stared at the management dashboard as restructuring notices rolled across the property system one after another. Evelyn Hart. Executive access revoked. Claire Monroe. Front desk authority suspended pending investigation. Brandon Cole. Security privileges frozen under ethics review. The lobby watched it happen in real time. No dramatic confrontation. No screaming. Just systems quietly removing power from people who abused it. Naomi looked toward Maya next. "Ms. Brooks." Maya straightened immediately. "Yes, ma'am." Naomi nodded once. "Effective immediately, you are acting guest experience supervisor until corporate arrives this morning." Maya's eyes widened. "Me?" Naomi glanced toward the frightened faces behind the desk. "You were the only person in this lobby willing to tell the truth before it became safe." Daniel Price let out a slow breath beside the elevators. "That is leadership," he said quietly. Guests nearby nodded in agreement. Evelyn looked around desperately now, as if searching for someone still willing to stand beside her. Nobody moved. The same lobby that had silently enabled her authority an hour earlier now watched her collapse beneath it. Naomi picked up the dead sweet keycard from the marble counter and held it between her fingers for a moment. "You locked me out of a room tonight," she said softly. "But what you really exposed was a culture that keeps deciding who deserves comfort before learning who they are." The entire lobby stood motionless listening. Naomi placed the keycard gently back onto the counter. "By sunrise," she continued calmly, "this hotel will finally start acting like the company I built." And somewhere behind the front desk, the first morning shift employees had already started arriving to witness the aftermath. By 5:42 in the morning, the energy inside the Meridian Crown Hotel had completely transformed. The same marble lobby that had carried tension and humiliation only hours earlier now felt stripped clean, like a storm had finally passed through and exposed everything left behind. Outside the towering glass windows, the first light of sunrise spread slowly across downtown Chicago, painting the streets in pale gold reflections. Guests who had witnessed the confrontation during the night lingered near the coffee bar longer than usual, quietly discussing what they had seen. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked relieved, like they had watched something overdue finally happen in public. Behind the front desk, corporate representatives had already arrived from Whitaker Meridian headquarters carrying tablets, audit folders, and temporary credentials. The old leadership structure was disappearing piece by piece before breakfast service even started. Evelyn Hart sat silently in a chair near the management office waiting for corporate review, no longer speaking with the authority she wore so comfortably a few hours earlier. Claire Monroe avoided eye contact with everyone passing through the lobby. Brandon Cole had already turned in his security badge. No shouting, no dramatic scene, just consequences arriving quietly and staying. Naomi Whitaker stood near the lobby windows holding a paper cup of black coffee while watching the city wake up beneath the early morning sky. She looked calm again now. Not victorious, not angry, just certain. Maya Brooks approached carefully, wearing a temporary management badge clipped beside her blazer. She still looked overwhelmed by everything that had happened overnight. Corporate says the restructuring team will stay through the weekend, Maya said softly. Naomi nodded once. Good. Maya hesitated before speaking again. Ms. Whitaker, thank you. Naomi turned toward her. For what? Maya glanced across the lobby toward the front desk, where new supervisors were already retraining overnight staff procedures. For not pretending this was just a misunderstanding. Naomi looked down briefly at the coffee cup, warming her hands. Too many people survive these moments by calling them misunderstandings, she said quietly. That is how the cycle keeps repeating. Maya absorbed the words carefully. Around them, the hotel continued waking into a new version of itself. Bellhops greeted guests differently now. Front desk employees spoke slower, more carefully. Even the atmosphere felt altered, as though the building itself had realized it could no longer hide behind polished marble and expensive lighting, while disrespect lived underneath it. Daniel Price walked past the lobby on his way to checkout, carrying a leather briefcase in one hand. He stopped briefly beside Naomi. I travel every week for work, he said. I have never seen someone handle humiliation with that much control. Naomi gave a faint smile. Control was never for them, she answered softly. It was for me. Daniel nodded slowly, like the sentence would stay with him for a long time after leaving Chicago. As he walked away, Naomi turned back toward the rising sunlight outside the windows. For a brief moment, she remembered the 19-year-old girl sitting in a rain-soaked car beside her mother outside that motel in Georgia decades earlier. She remembered promising herself that one day she would build spaces where nobody had to earn dignity before receiving it. Tonight had reminded her that buildings alone could never keep that promise. People had to protect it too. Behind her, the elevator chimed softly. Maya held out a newly activated penthouse keycard. This one carried full executive clearance restored across the system. Naomi accepted it gently between her fingers. The same small object that had become a weapon of humiliation hours earlier now felt almost symbolic in her hand. She looked once more across the lobby where frightened silence had finally been replaced with accountability. Then she spoke one final sentence before stepping toward the elevator. I did not raise my voice tonight, Naomi Whitaker said calmly. I raised the standard. And this time when the penthouse doors opened, nobody questioned whether she belonged there.